Okay, so in this latest episode of Queen Sport Adapting, we're joined by three colleagues from across the university. Kevin Murray is with me today, the Participation and Wellbeing Manager in Queen Sport. Have Alice Devlin, who is the Clubs and Societies Coordinator over in the Students' Union, and Niall Jackman, the Sports Clubs Development Officer in the Students' Union as well. So a bit of a cross-departmental discussion today, trying to look at some of the ways that we tie our work together and some of the core messages I suppose we have for the students, clubs and societies going forward over the next sort of couple of weeks, as we're hoping to have the clubs wrap up their business and look forward to transition to next season, next year, with new committee members on board. So I suppose I just start the conversation in the same way I've started some of the previous ones and just ask you about your working environment at home. Alice, if we just come to you first, how's lockdown been? What way you set up at home now?
Yeah, good. I'm enjoying it, to be honest. Maybe having a different experience from some other people because I live alone. So living alone and working from home, some days are quite quiet, can't lie. But no, it actually really suits me. I do miss kind of the crack of the office and the banter, but so far going okay. Wouldn't mind getting back to work sooner rather than later, but I'm sure we're all in the same boat.
Yeah, so you're not missing Niall too much there?
I am going on without him somehow.
So that's good. You have plenty of space to keep the head clear then. Kevin, what's it like for you? I'm sure you're a bit more busy. You have a son who's just completing A levels, or supposed to be completing A levels.
Yeah, I suppose it's been quite strange, really. I suppose adapting to that new normal, as the saying goes, with two teenagers in the house, trying to keep them focused in some way of working, albeit the A-level student has got it around his head now that it's going to be down the predicted grade route, so that's sort of out of his hands at this stage, and just trying to keep him focused in terms of his options, really, and it relates back to, I suppose, the work that we're doing in terms of his excitement and looking forward to potentially going to university in September. So it's quite a strange one when you're planning and then you have a son in the house who's thinking about going. So it's made me think a wee bit deeper. Wife working from home as well. So we all fight for the slot, the best slot for working. And unfortunately, I'm in the kitchen today, but sometimes I'm down in the other office, which is not a bad office, just on the downstairs floor as well. So yeah, we're just sort of adapting and getting used to it, and having a bit of structure to our days where we can. So yeah, all good
stuff. And Niall, I think you have two children who are quite a bit younger than that. What's it been like turning yourself into a schoolmaster at the same time as trying to get your work done?
I suppose I'm lucky enough they're not at school age, but I have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, or a three-nager as we call her, and they're pretty tough. Like, they're pretty tough work. But I suppose it's one of those things, you always lament the fact you don't spend enough time with your kids, and then something like this comes along, and then you're locking yourself away in the roof space, which you probably can't see behind me here. But no, it's strange times.
Yeah. Oh, it's interesting to hear just the variety of experiences out there. Everyone's just having to do their best to fit into whatever physical space and whatever time slots they can find in their day. So I suppose I might ask each of you to just outline a little bit more about what each of you do specifically within your role. So I'd mentioned your titles there, but Alice, if we just come to you again and maybe you just flesh out for us a little bit about what your role involves as Clubs and Societies Coordinator.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, as part of the Students' Union, it's an important part of my job and Niall's job to kind of represent the interests of all of our students, and to advocate for them on the issues that matter to them. Within clubs and societies then, I kind of have general oversight across all of the club officers, society committees, in terms of their governance, their finances, their administration, their organisation. Any query you can imagine has probably come into one of our inboxes at some point or another. So basically, we're there in the SU to be the one-stop shop for all things related to clubs and socks and how our students run them year to year. So I kind of have a finger in every pie.
What has been the most common inquiry to you from clubs and society so far?
Yeah, so since this began, there's been so much uncertainty with the students, with ourselves as staff, with everyone, it seems. And to begin with, the first wave was really questions around the feasibility of certain activities. Now it's kind of a blanket no to most activities, and I would say that our sporting clubs and our societies have been amazingly resilient and have dealt with this all so well. You know, at a time of year that's usually reserved for celebration, the likes of the awards, club formals, club trips away, you know, they've had a hard hand dealt to them, but they have dealt with it so well. Now the queries are kind of more around finances, administration, and getting things handed over to next year's committees. So myself and Niall are helping each of them to work through that process remotely and online now.
So maybe come to that in more detail later on in our discussion. Niall, if I just kick the same question to you and just outline what exactly your role is. It's a mystery to me. I don't know what you'd be at.
Thanks, Conor. It's nice to see him making an impression with the Queen's. No, I suppose, yeah, more specifically, obviously, the clues in the title. My role is to act as the main point of contact and advisor for the clubs, the Queen's sports clubs. We have 57 active clubs at the minute, and my role is really everything that I suppose you can think of in terms of support around that, from organising and coordinating a programme of training delivery for their volunteers, for their coaches, and just anything around internal and external opportunities around funding and the opportunity to grow and develop the clubs. So it's quite a wide remit, and it's ever changing, particularly in times like these. But it's very, very enjoyable, and I suppose now more than ever, both myself and Alice's role are going to be really, really prevalent, because students are facing a lot of uncertainty, and we have to be here to try and ease those fears and support them as best we can.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kevin, just again, same question to you, just to outline your role, participation and wellbeing manager, and what that entails.
Yeah, Conor. So I suppose within my role, I have responsibility for the development and delivery of all our sporting programs and wellbeing programs, whether that be through our clubs that Alice and Niall have focused on, but also the wider physical activity and fitness side of our program delivered through the PEC. Within our staff team, we've a large staff team of development staff that obviously you're involved with, Conor. With a development team of 6, which includes 4 sport-specific officers, 1 fitness and wellbeing officer, and a sport development assistant. So really, my role is sort of, I suppose, managing all those core programs, whether they be participation focus, maybe edging towards the performance ladder, and working alongside my colleague Aidan O'Rourke and the wider team. But then my role is really, I suppose, part of this discussion today shows how we do work together across university, that it's not just, you know, one particular department that works for students. It's really working in partnership with the Students' Union, with our staff wellbeing teams, our student wellbeing teams, and the wider student body in terms of delivering sport and student sport, really.
So all of you are involved in I suppose in different ways in some managerial decisions that are going on, whether that's, I suppose, managing the students or managing colleagues. Has anything you've ever done in your life, in your professional life so far, prepared you for the madness that has been the last 6 weeks?
Well, no. No, I think like I've been in Queen's probably over 10 years now, and this is probably one of the most challenging, I suppose, times in relation to that yearly cycle that we all follow, from our open days through to our fresher fair, through to our activity, through to the Christmas break, and then our intervarsity season. So it's very much, you know, really looking at that cycle and what's happened in March, and really sort of rethinking and thinking to ourselves, right, well, how do we actually support our staff that are responsible within our teams, but also our students in terms of how they're adapting, because if it's difficult for us and there's some anxiety within us, then how we're ultimately there to provide service. So how can we actually enhance that service whilst we're not actually on campus? So it's probably a way of just rethinking that and, you know, resetting our focus, really. And I suppose from a Queen's Sport point of view, really, I think we've adapted very well, and obviously programs like this and our online content's been excellent, and it's been a wide team approach, but also from the direction around Student Plus and how we actually engage that, and the staff team themselves and development staff have adapted well to that. And albeit this is a learning for everyone across the university, and we're already starting to talk about not just adapting now, but how we actually have adapted, but also around business recovery now, and how actually we're going to start scenario planning out how we actually return and what that's going to look like. So again, that's been a challenge for us all, and I think the team in Queen's Sport, and I'm sure that the Students' Union will allude to that, staff have adapted quite quickly, and there's been a lot of good I suppose support from the university in terms of handbooks through the staff wellbeing team, and also that support that students can get, and we're trying to signpost students towards that, because there is still a lot of students on campus, but also as we approach the exam time and how actually we can use that personal contact that we've built up with students to actually support them through these next couple of weeks.
Yeah, Alice, I suppose one of the things that I've found really interesting over the last couple of weeks has been, as Kevin rightly says, people have adapted very, very quickly. And I don't think that technology has presented a barrier. In fact, it's I think people have mastered most of it fairly quickly. I'm wondering, are there any particular elements of the technology that you've had to teach yourself about, or what's been the most interesting kind of new technological skill you've picked up?
Oh, I don't know about skill. We actually have very, very quickly put together an online platform for all of the clubs and societies to access to run their AGMs online. So usually this time of year is exactly meet in groups and vote on their new committee, but obviously that's completely impossible now. So really within about a week of lockdown, we had worked with a company we're already working with for some other information technology needs, and set up a full platform for them to run all of those elections online, which sounds amazing, but to try and train students on a system that I basically am brand new to as well has been good fun. I've kind of been comparing myself to the piano teacher who stays one lesson ahead and then teaches everybody else. But slowly but surely, we're getting the hang of it now, and a lot of the clubs and SOCs have used it successfully. So there's definitely technology that we'll take forward after all of this is blown over, and we'll use it in the future as well. But yeah, it was quite a quick jumping into the deep end there technologically, I think.
Yeah, it's been an interesting time for all of us. Niall, if we just move the conversation on a little bit, and I want to talk a little bit about the key programs. I suppose how do you think the delivery of these programs is going to change in the new term? And I suppose Alice has already talked about maybe the necessity for more technology as we approach the new term. But yeah, what do you think?
That's a big, broad question there, Conor. I suppose the honest answer is none of us know what the new term is really going to hold or what it's going to look like. All of this has brought to the fore the fact that we do and will have to look at delivery outside the norm, be that online or any other innovations that we can think of that's going to really enhance and develop the student experience. At this moment in time, what it's going to look like, we're not sure. What is encouraging is that we look across the board at our clubs and some of our excellent committee members who have been really, really innovative in these times, and that they've done really, really well to keep their spirits up within their clubs. Online quizzes, online hit sessions, Zoom sessions. Myself and Alice were speaking online earlier just about the likes of the sailing club who have got involved in like an online virtual regatta. That all their and
it's really, really cool.
Yeah.
So tell us how that works.
It's maybe something more you'd have to check out. Somebody that doesn't have a sailing background, I wouldn't be the best person to explain it. It looks pretty impressive. I think maybe it's something we could share the link on off the back of this.
Yeah, we'll post the link underneath this video if anyone wants to have a look at.
Yeah, and it might spark a few ideas. I mean, and that's the important thing. We're looking probably longer term, just to go back to your question as well, at looking at online club forums, virtual club forums, and it's things like that where students present their ideas, what they're doing within their clubs, that spark off a bit of a chain reaction to other clubs, and we're hoping that we can all lean on each other to try and get a wee bit more innovation, a wee bit more quality and student experience in a time where it's going to be really, really tough to offer what we've obviously usually accustomed to. So it's going to be interesting, but I'm really, really positive about it. I think all the guys are really positive. I'm lucky enough to work across, but well, lucky or unlucky to work across. Yes, Queen's Sport. And I think both camps are extremely positive about, you know, programs and potential for enhancing the student experience. But it's, you know, we have to see what September is going to look like first, and what the first term is going to hold before we can really make any bold statements or claims. But there is opportunities out there.
Yeah, just what Niall's mentioning there, I suppose it is a difficult one to put him on the spot for that one in particular about how the new term's going to look. So I'll maybe give you a wee bit of backup here in this one, Niall. I suppose you know, we're waiting government guidelines. You know, I suppose everyone is, in terms of announcements that were made this week, last week and this week. But then that eventually is going to filter down into our national governing bodies of sport, and then also then the university centrally will make that decision. So ultimately, our goal is to try and, again, go back to what Niall's mentioned. It's about really engaging with students, because I'm sure students out there have some great ideas about how we're actually going to move forward in the new term. And ultimately, our goal is to try and offer an equality of opportunity for new students coming on board in the new term, and what that's going to look like. You know, we'll certainly be behind them and behind the university and providing that service that we all sort of enjoy in our day-to-day work.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose to move on to maybe any specific messages or guidance then that between the three of you might have for clubs and societies. I had mentioned earlier, Alice, I think, about, you know, what's the kind of main queries that you're receiving from students. Maybe you could just you could just take up the baton on that one. What sort of questions have you been getting?
They sort of fall into two categories, first of which is finance. So to very quickly cover, just in case anyone is listening and they're not sure, the finance office in the Students' Union is still running. The staff are all working remotely, so students and club officers can continue to contact the finance office. They're offering a limited service, so some payments might be able to be made remotely, but not necessarily all. That being said, grant funding, so all of our clubs are in receipt of grant funding every year. That needs to be spent fairly soon, kind of before the end of June, July. Any unspent grant money is taken back for redistribution. Clubs should be reassured they're not losing that money. It doesn't go anywhere. It just goes back into the pot to be redistributed again next year to new committees. So myself and Kevin and Niall have already spoken about this. We're going to bring the grant application process as far forward as we can to kind of avoid any long delay between this year's grant being taken away and next year's grant being put in. So I would just reassure all of our club officers that money doesn't go anywhere, so don't panic if you're not able to spend all of your grant funding over the summer. Everybody's the same boat, and we're doing what we can to kind of mitigate against any delay. The other queries then coming in are largely to do with admin and committee handover. So as I mentioned, we've got our online AGM platform, but the other thing I would really push with clubs at the moment is not to let these circumstances cause a huge break in club momentum. So try to keep even the social connections going online, like Niall was saying, Zoom parties, pub quizzes. Even if it's not to do with your sport as such, definitely try and keep that momentum going and keep the social connections over the summer. Encourage new members to get involved with the committee next year. They can contact us if they have any questions. So yeah, basically just try and keep the momentum going for now, is what I would say.
Niall, if I am a key officer in a sports club at the minute, if I am a chair or a treasurer or whatever in one of our many sports clubs and societies, what are the couple of things I really need to be concentrating on when I have time away from studying and the other things I'd be doing at this time of year? What do I need to be putting in focus?
Yeah, I think if you do hold one of those key committee positions, or if you're on the committee at all in any of the clubs, it's a really ideal opportunity in less than ideal circumstances to get the head down and look towards next year. I mean, it's coming to the time of year where we do look for clubs AGMs, as Alice had mentioned earlier. You do have to start thinking about your executive officers and your committee members for next year. Also, I mean, looking towards the operational end of our clubs, you know, we do look annually at club constitutions and basically your code of conduct, your code of ethics around your club and how it operates on a day-to-day basis. It's a good opportunity for executive members to look at that, get it out of whatever folder it's stuck in, try and update it, make it relevant to the club at the minute, because I mean, we do pull some of these things out every now and again when a club are looking for a grant application or looking to apply to a grant either internally or externally, and some of the stuff we read, it's clear that it hasn't been touched in a very long time.
Can I just to come in there, because we had a discussion about this in another meeting earlier. What are some of the things that typically require updating within a club constitution? Because some of us, I suppose, conceptualize a constitution as something which is eons old and should be unchanging, because it's like part of the club's history. But what are some of the things that do need updated that students should specifically look out for?
There would be a couple of things, and they would tie in often with either the Students' Union Constitution or anything operational or health and safety related, especially for clubs. So say a recent update would be how we handle the likes of club conduct and misconduct. That shouldn't be being laid out in an individual club constitution because we have kind of pre-written content. So we would help them go through a constitution for maybe 2010, 2005, and we would highlight the areas that need looked at again. A lot of it does sit in stone for eons. Some of the stuff doesn't really change, but anything that's linked up to policy written by us or the university or yourselves, we would try and make sure it's always staying up to date with those.
And if any students...
I'm sorry, there's someone at my door.
We'll try and keep it flowing, will we?
Conor, just to pick up on that as well, just another thing that's obviously a massive opportunity in the current climate for existing committee members is you've got a big window now where you can really sit down and think of a proper development plan for next year. Now, albeit we don't know, as we stated earlier, what next year is going to look like and how close to normal it's going to be. But you've really got time now to consult with the rest of your executive committee, the rest of your club members, and put together a plan about what you actually want to do next year, what it's going to take to achieve that in terms of finances, in terms of personnel, maybe around coaching, in terms of growing your membership. You've got some time now to really think about this and put it down on paper as a good development plan. Unfortunately, and we are sympathetic towards it, we do ask clubs to submit development plans to us at a time of the year where there's an awful lot going on, and sometimes they don't come back with the highest of quality, or you can tell that a lot of thought's been put into it. But at the end of the day, they're there to grow your club. They're there to make it a successful year for your club. And I think now that's probably something that you should really be taking advantage of.
Kevin, just to ask you to pick up on that a little bit, obviously working within the development side of sport in the university, how, if I was a committee member or someone working with the club, how would you actually go about laying out a development plan? What are the nuts and bolts of what is a development plan essentially?
Yeah, good question, Conor. And I suppose myself, Niall and Alice would work throughout the year and trying to get our club officers that ultimately lead the delivery of their sports alongside some of the development staff and core staff that are funded through the governing bodies. But primarily, to answer your question, it's about taking a quick sort of snapshot of where you are currently and I suppose where you want to get to, and then laying out sort of core concrete sort of tasks and objectives about how you actually want to get there. I suppose part of this discussion and this whole chat around adapting and moving remotely has probably given us a bit of food for thought around how we actually engage even over the next few months. And I suppose out of this discussion today, if there's any students listening out there, club officers that would like to, get engaged with some webinars, we'll throw out a few ideas there around what that would look like, whether that be club planning, whether that be fundraising, whether that be equipment, whether that be coach recruitment. Those are probably a lot of the core areas that would come up year on year that would be included in the club development plan. But I suppose to answer you, it's really, reverting back to really, it has to be specific for your sport. You have to actually sort of think about where you want to get to, but think big, think around, if we look at some of the clubs that have actually developed into what we would view as academy status or performance status, a lot of those clubs started off at a sort of very much participation level, and through engagement with a wider student team, alumni engagement, then moving forward into NGB engagement, those clubs have actually developed through that pathway. So I wouldn't, be saying to any club now at this stage that don't think big, because we're here ultimately to support you and for you to leave a legacy whenever you leave Queens, that you have left the club in a better position. But again, just getting back to that point around any students that are listening today or any alumni that we'd like to see some more webinars over the next few months, certainly drop us an email. We'll ping through our emails there directly or some, and
Yeah,
we
we'll
can
put
take
them onto
that
the chat here. Yeah.
We can take
Yeah.
that forward. Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose like the level and the growth that a club can achieve are really only limited by how much time and effort and energy the student officers are able to put into it. You know, I just thinking of that, and there's some notable examples of clubs which have really pushed on in the last 24 months or so. Are there any in particular that stand out to any of the three of you who are a good example of a club which is progressing and developing in the right direction?
I would certainly have a few. I think me and Niall probably could rhyme off a couple that are stars at the moment. The likes of the Unihawk Floorball Club, they won Most Improved Club at the SU Awards, and they would be a real headliner for a small club, a fairly niche activity. You know, not everyone necessarily knows what floorball is when they walk into the Freshers' Fair, but the club officers have been so committed, really enthusiastic, and where we have seen the club go over the last year and a half, 2 years has been really, really incredible. So they would stand out for me as a great example of a developing club. And
is that success, is that always weighted against how a club actually performs like in competition, or are there clubs which are achieving success kind of behind the scenes in I guess more in that kind of development or participation level?
I mean, I would say it's a bit of both. I would look at any club which has really enhanced the student experience, either for its own members or for the wider community, as a very successful developing club. And one thing I would always say to students is you don't need to be the star player to be captain of a club. There are other skills that are really useful for club officers to have. You know, if you're a really keen photographer, you could become the club photographer, and that will help promote the club, help push them on social media, help get them more exposure. So really, it's those committees who are passionate, engaged, and who are using their skills and developing their skills that I think really push a club to success.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think as well, it's difficult to pick out one club or a series of clubs that are doing things really well, because you know how hard all the development volunteers work within the committees of each club. But the likes of triathlon, I think, do deserve special mention, because they're a big and they're a growing club, but they, you know, completely student volunteer led, with some support from ourselves, obviously. They do all their own work in terms of coach recruitment. They do all their work in terms of catering for all athletes in all disciplines, and they do put as much emphasis on, you know, a student that comes in and just wants to participate for the crack and have the social side of things, as they do for the athlete that really does have a chance of developing and progressing along. So they're an example of a club that works across all three pathways of our sports club plan, and it's just magnificent to see that there's a group of people, a group of students that are doing it themselves, you know, for the most part, and a lot of our other clubs can learn off them, and hopefully with the likes of the club forum and things like that, they can share that kind of information and support on how to do that.
Yeah, just then to re-emphasize, Kevin, you're talking about some potential webinars, and there's also the online handbook. I assume I'm right in saying that all student club members should be checking that handbook out on a daily or weekly basis.
Maybe not daily. Maybe if they're really keen, daily.
Okay, but a lot of the answers to the questions that you might have are found within the handbook, and again, we can post a link below the video to the handbook. Is there anything else you would like to just say on that before we move on to the last?
Just probably more related to the handbook is an excellent document that the Students' Union have pulled together, and it is always a good reference point for, you know, club committee members in terms of planning. So I suppose in relation to the current environment we're in, University have obviously, for me, led the way in terms of the FAQ sections that they have, whether that be centrally through the main university pages, but also through SU and through staff and student wellbeing teams. So any students who are looking specific questions around that, you know, check that out, but also then obviously come back to us directly if there's any concerns that you might have as well.
Yeah, great. So just to, I suppose, to move on to a final question to round things up. any kind of general advice that you have there to our listeners, our students, staff members, our colleagues, just on keeping active and looking after yourself at this time? I really trying to avoid using the word unprecedented, which seems to be a kind of a bingo game that everyone's having at the minute. So, but yeah, Kevin, maybe come to you first for that one.
Yeah, I suppose, Conor, look, everyone's finding their own niche and their own area that works well for them in terms of looking after themselves. For me, it's been recovering from an Achilles tendon rupture and trying to give a focus to building my calf muscle up over the last couple of weeks, and that's maybe given me a bit of to try and return to play of some description. But I suppose for me, like it's, we've talked about that whole adaptation, and now we're moving from that lockdown phase to how we get out of lockdown, and there is a lot of anxiety still around, and it's okay to be anxious around these things, but to make sure that you take those 5 steps and, obviously look at following the public health guidelines and, talking to people within your own family, keeping connected, doing exercise, taking a bit of time out. And I suppose for me, in particular, what I've found, with moving towards a form of remote management or development in terms of this and how we actually do it is how you actually are able to disconnect from that sometimes and disconnect from that sort of overall virtual world, but then use it to reconnect again if you want to talk to people, and just scenarios like this and seeing happy faces on a screen can sometimes help you. So again, the advice I would give is just the student wellbeing team are still operational and have contacts or if any students are feeling things difficult at the minute coming up the exam time, but also the staff wellbeing teams are there, and obviously through our own sort of platforms at Queen Sport and what we're actually doing through our YouTube channels in terms of some live classes, some engagement with coaches, some stories like this, and just some advice and information. But again, just to revert back to that sort of bit of connecting through social, but also disconnecting the odd time and taking that time away to just reflect and just chill yourself out, because it is a strange time for everyone. Everyone can affect them differently.
Yeah, one of the things my wife has been enforcing for me at home here is that if I'm on a Zoom call or a Microsoft Team call, it's in the office, but if it's a social one, it can't be in the office. So it's just like separating your parts of your life into different rooms, which as I found has been quite useful, like, because otherwise I would just sit in this chair about 20 hours a day, like. But yeah, Niall, I don't know, do you want to add anything then to what Kevin has said there? I know you were telling us you're out pounding the pavements there yourself.
Yeah, pounding. Sorry, on those payments. Yeah, no, things like that are good, Conor. I think the main thing, just to kind of add on to what Kevin was saying, we were obviously focusing a lot just with, we talk about pandemics, and there was a big problem with mental health. What's seemingly a growing problem. This undoubtedly is not gonna help that situation. There are going to be students out there that are struggling. What I would say is that, take a look around. You're in a ready-made community within a university sports club where you have access to other people. It's not just the responsibility of your executive committee members or your committee members of the club. If you're a coach, if you're a student, if you're a volunteer, if you have any affiliation with the club at all and you're a signed up member, reach out to people, be it through Zoom, be it through WhatsApp. I mean, I keep thinking, like, when I was at uni, probably the guts of, was sad to
40
say,
years ago.
20 years ago, but we didn't have the technology obviously that we do now. It doesn't bear thinking about what lockdown would have looked like back then. So be thankful for what is there, and reach out to people and keep that community spirit going in terms of your university club and involvement, and look forward and positive towards next year and focus on the positives rather than what the negatives are.
Yeah, I can't imagine what it would have been like on an old 3210 playing Snake and typing out text messages back when I was in university. Yeah. Alice, what about yourself? Any well-being points you want to add just before we finish up?
I mean, I would just echo everything that everyone else has said, but I would add, if you're finished up with your Queen Sport online HIT class for the day, the Students' Union is doing a bake-off, which is much more my style.
Excellent.
So we're trying to keep the fun going and get everybody together. So if you're not like me and you're not doing 5K a day and you want to bake a cake instead, head on over to the Students' Union.
What cake are you going for then, Alice? What's your? Can you let us know, or is it top secret?
It is top secret until Wednesday.
Okay.
We look forward to seeing that. Folks, here, I think that was really a really useful discussion, and hopefully there are lots of our student clubs and societies officers who listened in, and lots of our colleagues as well. So thanks very much for the chat, and maybe we'll check in again in a few weeks' time.
Thanks, Conor.
Great, Conor.
Great.
Thank you.
Brilliant.
Thanks.